Welcome to the deep dive. A new car, or maybe facing a huge decision like a college degree, or even just trying to keep up with the news feed. There's just so much information flying at us. And the real trick isn't just finding info, it's figuring out what actually matters and somehow making it stick. So today, we're diving deep into exactly that. We've pulled together, well, a really fascinating mix. There's academic research on learning, some cutting-edge marketing stuff about audience retention, and also real stories, people juggling full-time jobs and tough exams like the GRE, even tips for language tests. Yeah, we did a whole stack of sources, scientific papers on making effective educational videos, even the wild science of how your body clock affects focus, and we've basically boiled it down for you. And we're going to explore some, frankly, surprising connections, like for people creating content or teaching, just getting views. Yeah, that doesn't cut it anymore. The algorithms are looking for real engagement, especially because there's this critical drop-off of viewers in the first minute. But here's something really wild. Based on the duration of your melatonin signal, that sleep hormone, and this isn't just trivia, it actually impacts your mood, your energy, how well you learn, season by season. It's pretty profound. Or, get this, the tricks to make an online video engaging. They're surprisingly similar to what helps you stay focused during a long study grind.
Exactly. And our goal here isn't just to throw facts at you. We want to explain why this stuff actually matters in your life so you can take this knowledge and, really use it. This deep dive is all about giving you actionable insights, whether you're hitting the books for an exam, trying to sharpen your focus, or honestly, just trying to be a bit more productive day to day.
Okay, so let's start unpacking this. Information overload, especially online. Let's take educational videos as a starting point. What makes one actually work? Our sources keep pointing to three main things. Managing cognitive load, basically, not overwhelming your brain, maximizing engagement, and promoting active learning.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is how they fit together. Cognitive load theory. It basically says our working memory, brain's scratch pad for new stuff, it's tiny, really limited capacity, so it has to be selective, which means the ultimate hack for learning and for creators trying to hold attention is cutting the clutter. Ruthlessly. Good educational videos trying to minimize what they call extraneous load. That's mental effort wasted on confusing instructions, distracting visuals, things like that. And at the same time, they boost germane load. That's the good kind of effort, the brain power spent actually making connections and building understanding.
Right. So how do you actually do that?
Yeah.
Make it practical. The research suggests four main strategies. First, signaling. Using things like on-screen text, arrows, color changes to highlight the important bits. It guides your attention, cuts down the mental noise. Second, segmenting. Breaking info into smaller chunks, like short videos, maybe 6 minutes or less ideally, or even putting little click-forward questions inside a longer video. It just makes complex stuff easier to handle, gives your brain these mini breaks.
Third, and this one's key, is weeding. Seriously, getting rid of anything extra that doesn't directly help the learning goal. Distracting background music, overly fancy graphics, cut them. It's all about focusing your working memory where it counts. And fourth, mashing modality. Using both sound and visuals together, but for complementary info. Think like those Khan Academy videos where you see the drawing happen as the narrator explains it. Using both channels at once. That actually maximizes your working memory capacity.
And it's not just about managing the info flow, right? Engagement is huge. If you tune out, you obviously can't learn. I saw this research from MOOCs, those massive online courses. Videos under 6 minutes, people watched almost all of it, nearly 100% engagement. But stretch that to, say, 9 to 12 minutes, engagement drops to like 50%. And for those longer 12 to 40-minute ones, only 20% engagement. So yeah, shorter really does seem better. So out of those four things you mentioned, signaling, segmenting, weeding, matching modality, which one do you think is maybe the trickiest for creators or even for us as learners to get right, and why?
That's a good question. I think maybe weeding is often the hardest because it demands really tough self-editing. You have to know your core message inside out and be willing to cut things you might be attached to. It's hard, but vital for clarity. And this ties right into keeping people engaged, whether it's a student watching or you trying to focus on studying. Presentation matters a lot. Using a conversational style, not super formal, that creates a kind of social connection, makes people try harder. And surprisingly, speaking fairly quickly and with enthusiasm, that actually boosts engagement too. It makes the whole thing feel more immediate, more relevant, like it's made just for you.
Exactly. And it's funny how that mirrors good teaching in a real classroom, doesn't it? But yeah, what are the challenge of making learning active when the medium itself, like video, is kind of passive?
That's the puzzle, yeah. You essentially have to build interaction into it. Studies show that putting videos together with interactive questions, or adding features like video chapters so students have control, or just giving guiding questions beforehand, all that stuff significantly improves learning. Even just making the video part of a homework assignment where you have to apply the ideas. That forces active engagement and boosts understanding.
Okay, now check this out. Everything we just talked about for educational videos. Engagement, keeping attention. The YouTube stats tell almost the exact same story. It's really fascinating how these patterns just pop up everywhere. If you connect this to the broader online world, especially YouTube, audience retention, that's the new king. Forget just views. Channels that are really good at keeping viewers, say, in the top quarter for retention, they see like 3.5 times more subscriber growth. Views alone just don't cut it. The platform's algorithm rewards stuff that actually holds your attention.
And the numbers are pretty stark. Overall average retention on YouTube, just 23.7%. There's a huge drop-off, 55% of viewers gone by the 60-second mark, and people basically decide in the first 8 seconds if they're sticking around. So yeah, your content gets like an 8-second audition. It's brutal. Although educational how-to videos do better, averaging about 42% retention. It shows that structured, valuable content does naturally hold attention better.
So whether you're making content or honestly just trying to keep your own attention locked on something, that first impression, that intro, it's absolutely critical. Videos that clearly state their value proposition in the first 15 seconds, they keep about 18% more viewers hanging around at the 1-minute mark. And then there are those mid-video slumps, right? Especially in longer content. These danger zones, maybe around the 65% point, can cause another 15% of viewers to bail if the pacing doesn't change or something new doesn't happen visually. And get this, only about 16% of viewers, on average, even make it to the final 10 seconds, which really tells you you need your call to action way earlier.
This also circles back to knowing your audience. YouTube thinks about this too, using audience personas. They know that dedicated learners are way more likely, like 2.5 times more likely, to rewatch parts than casual entertainees. And if you target niche enthusiasts with really deep detail, you can see a 30% jump in average watch time. It just reinforces that tailoring your content, knowing who you're talking to, whether they want a quick laugh or a deep dive, is absolutely key for retention.
Okay, so the big takeaway from the online world seems clear. Whether it's an algorithm judging you or your own brain trying to focus, engagement boils down to clarity in delivering value fast. But what about when you are the one trying to engage? You're the student trying to make yourself perform, especially when time's really tight. This is where I think authenticity really comes into play.
Oh, absolutely. It turns out videos that feel heavily AI generated or low effort AI slop, they have something like 70% lower audience retention compared to stuff with a real human face or clearly high effort original work. Even kind of low-quality human narration tends to hold attention better than the slickest AI voice. Viewers, and let's be honest, our own brains, we value that genuine connection. We can tell when real human effort went into something.
Right. Now let's pivot to how this applies to your own learning, your performance, especially when life is hectic.
Yeah.
We looked at some real-world stories, like people studying for the GRE while holding down a full-time job, and the feeling was unanimous. It's ridiculously hard to find quality time and just plain exhausting managing study time with a job.
Based on those GRE stories, what's maybe one piece of advice you heard that seems really practical but maybe gets underestimated? That is tough. They shared so many good tips. But I think they treat it like a game mindset really struck me. Focusing on shortcuts, analyzing mistakes, finding ways to almost trick your brain into staying engaged when it's tired. That seemed powerful. A lot of them managed maybe 2-3 hours a day, sometimes really late at night, plus more on weekends. The key seemed to be setting a timer for dedicated blocks, maybe 1.5 hours, and just focusing on hitting 0 on that timer, even if it took a few tries.
And flexibility. That came up again and again. Like one person came into the office 2 hours early to study, then did another hour right after work, just so home could be home, No studying, commutes became study time, watching videos, flipping flashcards. People get really creative using every spare moment. Even bathroom breaks for a vocab review. It's pretty incredible, the ingenuity.
But then there's the burnout question. How do you avoid crashing when you're juggling that much? People really stressed being kind to yourself, taking breaks, not beating yourself up if you miss a study session. One person, a nurse working long 12-hour shifts, mentioned deliberately planning for a longer prep time, like 3-4 months, instead of cramming into 1 or 2. It just made it more adaptable. And kind of counterintuitively maybe, some found that fitting in even 15-30 minutes of exercise daily, like just walking or jogging, was essential, kept them energized, kept them sane.
It really boils down to focus and time management, doesn't it? People who ace these tough exams,
Right.
TREE, IELTS, whatever. They talked about getting much better at managing time and focusing effort where it's truly needed. And for language tests like IELTS, avoiding repetition is apparently a big scoring factor. So things like recording yourself speak, actively using synonyms, using pronouns effectively, switching up word forms like beauty the noun versus beautifully the adverb. It all adds color and coherence. It's about making your communication engaging and dynamic, kind of like we talked about with the videos.
Okay, now let's shift gears again and dive into the really cool science of how our bodies work and how deeply that's connected to learning and performance. A massive factor is our circadian rhythm, mostly run by light. And get this, light exposure literally stops melatonin, the sleep hormone, from being released. It's wild to think our bodies use the duration of that melatonin signal, how long it's active each night, to figure out the time of year. Longer signals in winter, that tends to correlate with a more depressed state system-wide, affecting reproduction, metabolism, mood. So for your own learning and focus, what does this mean? Treat morning sunlight like it's non-negotiable, especially if you struggle with winter blues or just waking up for that early study session.
Wow. I always thought coffee was the main wake-up call, but this research makes it sound like our eyes are the real alarm clock. So practically speaking, what should you do? Get bright light exposure early. Your internal clocks need a lot of photons to really get the daytime message. Even if it's cloudy, just stay outside longer. Or if you're inside, use really bright overhead artificial lights. Interestingly, moonlight or candlelight or even a campfire, that typically won't reset your clock at night. The light-sensing cells in your eyes actually adjust their sensitivity.
And it's crucial to distinguish between blue light and just bright light. Lots of people worry about avoiding blue light, but actually you want tons of blue light early in the day and throughout the day. Don't wear blue blockers then. At night, though, it's less about the color and more about the brightness. Even with blue blockers, if the lights are bright enough, they'll still signal daytime to your brain. The main thing is avoid bright light of any color between roughly 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. And just to bust a myth, shining light in your ears or up your nose, that won't do anything for your circadian rhythm. The biology just doesn't work that way. It's all through the eyes.
Okay, another big lever for our internal clocks is temperature. Our core body temp naturally hits its low point around 4 a.m. and peaks late afternoon, maybe 4, 6 p.m. This rhythm is built in, but it gets anchored or entrained by things like light and also exercise. If you exercise first thing in the morning consistently, your body actually starts to anticipate it and prepares you to wake up a bit earlier the next day. Is your body adapting, getting more efficient?
Which leads us to the really interesting stuff about cold exposure. Ice baths, cold showers. The key insight here is why you're doing it determines how you should do it. It's about the shiver. If you get in the cold and actively try not to shiver, stay calm, use deep breathing, visualization, you're using it for stress inoculation, training your nervous system to handle stress. But if your goal is fat loss, boosting metabolism, you want to do the exact opposite. Let yourself shiver. Go for it. Shivering triggers the release of a chemical called succinate that activates brown fat, which ramps up thermogenesis, basically turns on your internal furnace and burns fat.
That's a fantastic example. Understanding your goal dictates the action. It's not just cold is good. Food plays a role too, right? Our rhythms. Generally, fasting seems linked to more alertness. Being in a fed state, especially after a big meal, leads to more quietness, relaxation. Makes sense. Blood's going to your gut.
Yep. And there's also this subtle effect called eating-induced thermogenesis, just the slight rise in body temperature after you eat. That also nudges our rhythm, which means eating really late at night can actually push your natural wake-up time later the next day. Oh, and the type of food matters too. Foods with tyrosine nuts, red meats tend to push towards dopamine, wakefulness. Foods high in tryptophan turkey, complex carbs lean towards serotonin, more calm, maybe even lethargic states.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground today. A real deep dive. From designing educational videos to manage cognitive load and keep people engaged, to the incredible science of how light, temperature, exercise, even your meals, tune your internal clocks for sleep, wakefulness, and learning. And we also touch on those practical real-world strategies from people tackling things like the GRE while working.
Yeah, and we saw how things like authenticity and perceived human effort are surprisingly critical for holding attention, whether it's on YouTube or just motivating yourself to study. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? If YouTube channels boosting retention by just 10 percentage points get a 25% or more increase in impressions from the algorithm, what could similar improvements in your personal engagement with your own goals and tasks do for your productivity, for your learning?
So wrapping this up, what does it all mean for you listening? We mentioned how colleges use student personas, like high school senior Sam, or working student Wes to target their marketing. Maybe think about your own learner persona. What are your main goals right now? Your biggest challenges? Where do you get your best information? Could defining that for yourself, like a marketer would, help you focus your efforts? And think about those small, consistent tweaks. Tracking your morning light exposure, knowing whether you should embrace the shiver in a cold shower for metabolism or fight it for stress management. These little things